house Japanese Americans during World War II, when the U.S. believed that Japanese Americans might be acting as spies and should be incarcerated. But Ralph Lazo wasn't Asian. He was a Mexican-American teenager who was against forced incarcerations. And to prove it, he made a decision that at the time was unimaginable. Ralph Lazo was born on November 3rd, 1924, in Los Angeles, California. He was born to parents of Mexican and Irish descent. His father's side of the family migrated from Mexico years before and had settled into the Bunker Hill neighborhood of downtown LA. The Bunker Hill area was home to families of all different backgrounds, but Ralph's closest friends were second-generation Japanese Americans. Ralph grew up spending his days playing basketball with his neighborhood friends, and many of his nights eating dinner at their houses. Ralph's mother had died when he was young, leaving his father to take care of him and his sister. To provide for the family, his father had to work 2 jobs, working long hours, often leaving Ralph and his sister home alone. So Ralph's friends became like a second family to him. In 1941, Ralph Lazo was 17, and he and his friends were attending Belmont High School. He had a job delivering newspapers, and he was looking forward to graduating with his friends from Belmont High the following year. But on December 7th, 1941, that all changed. It was a Sunday, just before 8 a.m. when the Japanese Navy attacked the United States Naval Base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. This attack led the U.S. to declare war on Japan. After the declaration, the American government worried that U.S. citizens of Japanese ancestry might be acting as spies for the Japanese government. So President Roosevelt ordered the imprisonment of all Japanese people living in the United States. Camp Manzanar was the first of 10 concentration camps built around the U.S. to incarcerate Japanese Americans, and it was located in California's Owens Valley. By the beginning of 1942, thousands of Japanese immigrants and Japanese Americans were imprisoned at the Manzanar concentration camp, also called the Relocation Center. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times in 1981, Ralph explained how anger had overwhelmed him as he watched all the friends he grew up with and their families be forced out of their homes. He said, "It was wrong, and I couldn't accept it." So when one of Ralph's friends suggested he come along to show his support, Ralph didn't hesitate. He went home and told his dad he was going to camp. Then he went to the Santa Fe train station in downtown LA and got on the first train headed for the Manzanar concentration camp. His dad, of course, didn't know Ralph meant a concentration camp when he said camp. But by the time he found out, Ralph had already been there for months. Because of his skin color, no government official at the camp ever asked Ralph about his ancestry or if he was even Japanese. Ralph was later quoted as saying, "Being brown has its advantages." But it wasn't hard for his fellow camp inmates to see that Ralph Lazo was Mexican-American and not Japanese, mainly because he didn't look Japanese. But everyone liked Ralph, so no one said a thing. Ralph lived at Camp Manzanar for 2 years, where everyone slept on straw-filled mattresses in overcrowded living quarters that were surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards. Ralph did his best to keep everyone's spirits up, and Ralph and his friends did end up graduating together in 1944 from Manzanar High School, a school created inside the camp. In August of 1944, government officials finally realized that Ralph Lazo was not Japanese when he was drafted into the Army. He was 19. Ralph was taken from the camp and sent to the military, where he served from 1944 to 1946 and was awarded a Bronze Star for heroism in combat. Manzanar continued operations for another year after Ralph left, allowing the last of the incarcerated to leave the camp in November of 1945. After returning from war, Ralph Lazo graduated from UCLA and earned a master's degree from Cal State Northridge. He got married and had 3 children and became a counselor and teacher, teaching in California and Mexico. To this day, Ralph Lazo is the only non-spousal, non-Japanese person to have voluntarily went into a concentration camp. And over the years, he's been celebrated for that decision. But Ralph always made sure to never let his life outshine the real issue of what happened in 1942, telling the LA Times that the real story is not about him, but about injustice. In 1992, Ralph Lazo passed away on New Year's Day at the age of 67 from liver disease. Ralph's story was later made into a 30-minute short film in 2004 called Stand Up for Justice, The Ralph Lazo Story. In an interview not long before Ralph Lazo's passing, a child asked him the question everyone wanted to know most. Why did you go? You didn't have to go. And Ralph replied, none of us should have had to go.